Part of working in PCN is basically engaging with your local community. By doing that, you can hopefully make the whole aspect of primary care networks so much more effective. And especially in a time as we move towards integrated care systems, it's going to be more important than ever. We've covered how to do community engagement before, but in this episode, we're joined by a team, particularly Bill Graham, talking about how he's been able to develop that work locally within his community to basically make it so much more effective and easier within the primary care network. So let's have a look as Bill joins us as we tech enhance your primary care and learning. Hello, EGP learners, and welcome to this episode as I'm joined by Bill Graham talking about community engagement within your primary care network. How are we doing there, Bill?
I think where I'm based, which is in Yorkshire, we're probably further ahead than most primary care networks because we have invested in how we can work closer with our communities, and hopefully I can share some of our experience today with the audience, Gandhi.
Sure. Just before we get into that then, Bill, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you've been engaged within your local community.
Yeah, I think what's most important is just thinking about my background is I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a GP. My background is in fact in community work, and 4 years ago a GP I worked very closely with in Leeds. So I was running a community centre and community projects, and I've linked very closely to our health system in Leeds, and we had a lot of success in bringing investment into the area and doing some really good stuff with our communities based around health. And this GP left and joined this group of GPs called Modality over in Bradford. I'd never heard of that before because I'm a community worker, not a GP. But quite quickly, the group then asked me, did I want to come and join them and maybe do community, trying to explore what this community health could look like and how it could fit into primary care. And being of a certain age and not often getting an opportunity to do something radically different, I took the chance and I stepped over the fence from community work into primary care 4 years ago. And it's been a revelation. It's been, for me, it's been a real learning process, finding out what primary care does. It's amazing what you guys do. But it's also been a chance for me to bring what I'm good at into the primary care space and share my knowledge about how to work with communities.
Okay, so tell us, how has that community engagement worked, where you've been doing it, and what specifically have you been doing lately?
Will we go to the slides, Gandhi, or will we start off with the slides? So like I say, I joined Modality AWC, which is Airedale, Wharfdale, Craven. It's a part of Bradford 4 years ago. And you can see from the slides there. And I did a lot of work in the health space in my community work, trying to take community projects, predominantly in the mental health space, and taking them from being grant-funded projects to being commissioned by the health system. And that was seen to be quite successful at what I did. And then I got the chance to join the Bradford GPs at Modality. And their view really was how can we use the capacity in the community to help us deliver general practice. Like I say, my experience is running a charity that was delivering projects in Leeds. But I've done that for a number of years. So I've got a number of roles with charitable funders and some of the network groups who kind of would use my experience to share with others about how we can deliver good community health projects. So it's something I've always been really interested in, and always fascinated by how we might get health funding to support the community projects that are actually delivering good health outcomes for people. So it's always been something I've been really interested in. If we go to the next slide, it's a bit of a practical example of one of the things we've done. Locally, we work with our voluntary and community partners, and over the last 4 years, I've built up some really good relationships with thank you very much. Sorry, somebody's just dropped off a sandwich for me. Thank you. Really good. Yeah, I've worked very carefully with our voluntary and community groups, and during the vaccination program, having built those relationships, we were able to recruit 30 VCS colleagues to help us on the vaccination program, and we employed them through the R's scheme at the time, and they just supplemented our practice teams in terms of getting messages out to communities, talking to people on the phones, and helping us set up pop-up community vaccination clinics. And here in Bradford, in our part of the world, we actually had a noticeably higher uptake of the vaccine in the first and second instalments of the vaccine, with a lot of the marginalised and ethnic community groups. So a really good success story there. The next slide. Yeah, again, just thinking about the vaccination program, these relationships led to really good messaging into the community and getting the information out to the community in a way that they could understand and distribute. You use those local assets around you, which is your community groups and your community leaders, to get them involved in health and get them sharing messages. And by involving them, you build that trust. I mean, a lot of people would say to me that trust between services and communities, particularly in some of the more deprived communities where I work, that trust had broken down a little bit. And I think by investing in the relationship building and the communities themselves, you can rebuild that trust. Because at the end of the day, I've always found people want to be part of our community and our society. People want better health. They want better health for themselves, their families, better opportunities for their families. And I often think there's so much more that we have in common across our society than keeps us apart, and we sometimes forget that. And I've got a great faith in people from all communities, all backgrounds, that at the end of the day, we do just want better opportunities for our families, for the people we care for, and better health for the people we care for as well, and we are close to. So I often think that keeping that in mind is always a good driver for the positivity that can come from community work. If we go on to the next one. So just sitting, first of all, thinking about the vaccination program, a lot of what we did was listening to what the picture there is actually the first women's only clinic for vaccination in the UK, and we ran that because a number of community leaders from the Asian community had said to us, you're not taking account of the fact that there's cultural barriers that might stop ladies coming to buildings and getting undressing in front of people to get vaccinated. So we ran specific women-only clinics in Keighley, and huge uptake from the community to access those clinics. And it's just an example of having that flexible approach to deliver the care that we want to deliver, and listening to what the community wants as well. And if we're willing to do that, then we can repair some of that damage done in terms of the trust between communities and services that can be in a state of disrepair at times. And this was incredibly powerful for us, because working in this way and building those relationships then allows us to do other things that we might want to do as well. So on to the next slide. Just quickly on some of the figures from locally. We ran vaccinations out of a mosque here, which became our one of our vaccination sites in effect for 6 months, and we vaccinated 50,000 people over those 6 months. Absolutely incredible. I think it's that trust, that trust there. People would come there, that it was a trusted space for them, but then they would tell their family members to come. That resonated as well. I think the other interesting thing was running a vaccination site from a mosque. It certainly opened the community who don't use the mosque, a lot of maybe the white Christian population. It was the first time they'd ever been in a mosque, and they were saying, wow, what a space. And maybe it created a bit of cohesion and understanding as well We did get some comments from some people, why are you using a mosque to vaccinate people? But the reality was, it's a big mosque in Keighley. It's beside Asda. Asda had said we could use their car park, so car parking was excellent. The mosque was on the ground floor, so access for people, even if they were disabled, was pretty straightforward. And it was a nice big room, so we could set up the vaccination stations, as you can see in there. I think we had up to 8 vaccination stations in there, and our record on a day in there was maybe doing 900 folk in a day at the mosque. So yeah, a remarkable space and a remarkable time when I think back on it, about how much we managed to do there. And that's just an example of some of the photographs and the messaging that would be shared by the community. So you let the community take over the messaging and let them message about things like vaccinations. And this can develop into other health aspects as well, as I'll show you later on in the slides. Just another example here, working with the Bangladesh community in Keighley too, running a session with them. And again, it deepened our understanding as we really delved into our local community and understanding the differences between the Pakistani and the Bangladesh diaspora that live in Keighley. And they have their own, they do have their own cultures. I kind of flippantly explain it as a bit like Glasgow, where you have Catholics and Protestants, Rangers and Celtic. In many ways, Bangladesh and Pakistani, it's kind of a similar, there's a bit of a similar split there, where they are different communities, in effect, within what's often described as a single South Asian community. And I think you have to really dig in and understand those relationships in order to understand how to then work with the communities in the best way to deliver those health outcomes. So, really interesting from my point of view. So lessons from the vaccination program, from my point of view, is work in a flexible way with your communities. Using data, I think, is really important as well. We all know about health inequality data, and well, hopefully we know about it and how to maybe analyse it. Thinking about things like areas with indexes of multiple deprivation. Find those partners to work with. For me, it's always a coalition of the willing. It's easier to work with people who are willing to work with you, so it's always a good first step. Let the communities lead you where possible. That helps you shape your projects. And you'll also notice that when you've done some work with a community and you go back and you do it again, it's always busier the second time, or the third time it gets busier again, because that relationship's built and word gets out. I often ask, next slide, please, Gandhi. I often ask the people we work with what they're looking for when working with health providers or PCN. They want us to work at their level, their community level. And I think, having run a community organisation myself, understand that. It's about, be prepared to do what the community wants. Don't expect that you can just transplant a GP surgery into a community setting and run it like a GP surgery. Just be a bit more flexible about the way you might deliver the work. VCS community organisations will always find the health system really difficult to understand and navigate, and to take part. So try and make it easy for them. I think people who work in the health system find it really difficult to navigate anyway. So it is a complex system. But when you're building those relationships, try and make it an easy project to run and try and make it as simple as possible. I think, I've been fortunate that locally our primary care network invests in me to make integration happen. I think as we work across complicated health systems, and we've got integrated care boards, and we've got primary care networks, and we've got community partnerships, and how these different stakeholders work in a system, maybe by aligning the agendas of the stakeholders, you can find ways of funding to create roles or posts like mine, which maybe has a focus on integrating community and health together. I always think we have to have quite a creative mindset, looking for opportunities. I think, having run a charity, I know how important it is to have the funding to deliver the services, how to look after people, how to market services as well and promote them. So we need to be quite entrepreneurial and have a sort of a can-do attitude here as well. And I'm always keen to encourage partnership working, because I think if you partner with communities, you've got a better offer for the wide range of patients you might have. Someone I work very closely with, some of you might know Dr. Tom Ratcliffe. He's been a big supporter of the work we've done here locally. This invest in roles that connect the health, patients and their communities together. And that's how you build those trusted relationships that makes this way of work possible. So yeah, I think it's kind of just reinforcing that investment in integration is really important. You guys are GPs or health professionals. You're really busy doing the day job, and you don't have a lot of time to think about this stuff or think about how you might integrate. So maybe get someone with some community-based experience, get them into your PCN and let them do the legwork, let them build those relationships and let them see where the opportunities might lie to deliver the healthcare that communities need, and think about how do we work effectively at reducing health inequalities. No doubt these slides will get shared, but I've put aside some top tips here for people running PCNs. So for me, the top one is building those relationships and having the time to build those relationships. Again, you're a busy GP seeing patients, these sort of 12, 14-hour days that you have. Where would you ever get the time to build a relationship with your local community groups, which there'll be such a richness of groups and organisations out there? It's impossible. So think about how we can invest to build those relationships, to release that capacity that exists in the community. Really important. Let communities lead where possible. I think that's really important too. If you want to work with communities and you've got targets, an example might be cancer screening for Asian ladies, for example. I'm working with local community groups that work with Asian ladies, and I let them lead on the messaging. I let them talk to people. It's a bit pointless me talking to them. Let them, share the information, let them translate the information, let them share the information. Really important. And have that, let the communities lead that conversation. I think personally, the way I work as a community worker, you've got to believe in the work you do, and you need the energy to make it happen. I'm not as young as I used to be, but I think I do a really good job as a networker, talking to folk, getting myself out and about. I've often used the analogy of shoe leather. I didn't know anyone in Bradford 4 years ago, but I'm a person who's quite confident. I get out and about, use my shoe leather to get out and understand my area, get to meet all the local groups. It makes a big difference if you're a face people see. Again, health professionals, you're sitting in that GP surgery, you're not really getting out to the community, you're busy seeing patients. That's absolutely fine. My job is not to be in the GP surgery. I've said this a lot. I don't need to be sitting in the GP surgery with everyone else. I need to be out and about and be that visible face of what general practice is and hear what people have got to say. And I think that's really important. So it's a good way to work. And, you won't work in this way unless you can find a way to invest in it. So whether it's as a primary care network or a local health system or an integrated care board, here in Bradford, they are creating 4 roles like mine to work across other parts of Bradford because they've seen the impact of the work we've done locally, working with our communities, and they think it's great. So I'm really keen to constantly promote this agenda, that if you want to release the capacity that exists in your communities, you've really got to invest in that process. And just finishing up there with a quote from Lord Victor Adeboye. I come from the community sector. I know what we can do and how we could add to the health system. That's my experience over the last 20 years. And, Lord Victor's right here. If we can find a way to release that capacity that exists in our communities, it will really help how we deliver care. It will help general practice at a time of ever increasing demand, and it will help patients because they'll get the support and the help that they need, which isn't always that very strict medical support. As we know, so much of the demand is around people with social issues or medical issues with an underlying social context. So yeah, really important to think about working in this way. Anyway, thanks for having me, Gandhi. There's just a bit there about, you can follow me on Twitter at System Anarchist, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bill. And I do have a couple of questions. And if other people who are watching us live have questions, feel free to stick them in the chat. I'm happy to bring them on and stuff. I guess there's been some really positive work that you've done throughout that scope. And you mentioned obviously the impact that's had on the vaccination schedules, both I'm guessing with COVID and obviously now moving forward with flu vaccinations and the combination of the two moving forward. What out of all that stuff that you explained to us, what would you say was the key message, the one thing that if networks who haven't got you basically can do to get started?
Make an effort to get to some of your community partnership meetings or your community meetings that will be going on as part of your wider integrated care system locally, and then you'll meet the people who are willing to get involved. So that's a good first step. You know, if you've not got the capacity or the ability to invest in somebody to help you with this, then at least get yourself out and about and show willing to work with your community, because then people will come to you with the challenges that they're dealing with, but also how they might be able to help. You'll be amazed how helpful the communities want to be. They want to be part of this conversation. They want to be involved. That's what I've always found. It was the same in Leeds. It's the same I found in Bradford. And I think at the end of the day, you know, people want better health. They want their families to have good health and better opportunities. And it's that bit that, you know, there's more, we've got more in common as people than we ever have with our identities that we have within the communities we live, you know, but there's similar things that we all want and we all strive to have. And I think you'll find a willing community there ready to talk.
And you talked about investment in particular. You know, there will be networks out there that haven't had to think about how this may work and stuff. If they wanted to kind of dip their toe in, you know, get started, I mean, what kind of finance are we talking? You know, is there a guide you can give in terms of, you know, the different stages maybe, I guess? You know, I know one idea we had as a network, we created a local fund for other people to apply for us to use to help develop local community initiatives. And, you know, we started out quite small. We said that we'd take applications for up to about £1,000 just to get little kind of projects up and that kind of stuff. But I guess, you know, those kind of things, or, you know, if they are looking at community offices, that kind of stuff, is that something you can share with us in terms of information to help direct people?
I mean, again, with the contacts I had when I moved over to Bradford, I was able to create a fund using external funders, not health funders, that our communities could apply in for. And those funds were used to supplement projects that were supporting our social prescribing offer. Again, that's probably more to do with the links I had than being able to replicate that. But for me, that framework, that funding framework, has been picked up by the Bradford system, and we're hoping to roll it out across Bradford over the next few years, because we've run this funding programme for 3 years, and this is the 3rd year. This year, the health system's invested in this framework that I've helped create with external funders, and it's all about delivering that support in the community, but some resource behind it. And we link it into social prescribing because it kind of makes sense locally. Something I could maybe come back and talk about. But that for me is a framework that I think works. And for the health system, it gets them thinking. The thing we've talked about is the left shift to the 1%, is what we call it in Bradford. And it's this idea of, can we shift 1% of health spending into community and preventative work? And it's certainly gained traction in Bradford because it's become part of the planning and the community investment standard, they're calling it in Bradford, to invest in the community health that exists. So, because communities need some resource, and that's a way to get them that resource, Gandhi. So that's a whole different conversation for me. But there's a lot of information I could add on to that. But I'm aware, you know, we do have a limited amount of time today.
And I think, yeah, happy to share those resources. If people do want to have a look at those, have a look down below in the show notes once Bill's been able to share what he can with me and stuff. I guess my last question that I have for you, Bill, is what's next? What's the next kind of project you're looking at, and what do you think is the next thing on the horizon to focus on?
I think for me, what we've been working on locally is how do we use some of the expertise in the community for particularly mental health support, and how do we bring that in to be part of our sort of PCN mental health pathway. So we're just currently developing this mental health transformation project locally, and we will be funding the community capacity to then create a pathway to get patients into community support for mental health. And that should be going live early next year. And for me, it's just that, it's just that chance to show how that can be a good solution for people, and hopefully try and stop people just bouncing back to GP appointments, but get them held, looked after in the community support that's available, but make it part of the system and fund it properly.
Awesome. Sounds great. And I think if people, do want to check out more information about how to do community engagement and stuff, I know me and Andy have talked about that previously in one of our episodes where we talked about network and community level engagement as part of the engagement series we did. If you do want to check out that information, have a look at this video probably coming up around here. Thank you, Bill, for your time. I've really appreciated it, and definitely learning about those tips and ways that networks in particular can look at things. And as always, we're here to help tech enhance your primary care and learning. And we'll catch you in the next episode. See you later.